All right. Um, Welcome to the Church of Logic. I'm Cody Rue, and I'm here with Camille again. And today we're going to talk about the life and times of Kurt Gödel, which, I think it'll be entertaining just to see the background into a person who has just had so much influence on modern mathematical logic.
Hello, and thank you for having me back. So yes, it's interesting to talk about Gödel. I don't know anything about logic, and yet his name is familiar to me. The first time I heard his name was on an ad in France in 1998 or 1999, something like that. And I didn't realize the impact this person would have in the community of logic. But it's very interesting to talk about him, and now I've learned a little bit, and he's a fascinating character that I'm happy to talk about today.
Yeah, yeah. I do think he's an interesting person to talk about. Kind of, disregarding the technical aspects of his work, but also, yeah, he lived during interesting times. As we're going to get into a little bit.
Right. Yes, so when was he born?
So he was born in 1906 in what is today the Czech Republic, but at the time was Austro-Hungary, and he was German speaking, and so he felt much more connected to Austria, kind of as part of his birthright. Yeah, even though the surrounding region was closer to Hungary. I guess I didn't know this before looking it up just a couple days ago. His dad was the owner of a textile factory, so he was born into a relatively well-off family, and his family was well established in that region.
But at the same time, his father was not an academic, and he had a very interesting faculties. I mean, this guy is so prolific and so successful in what he did in logic. So, how do you know how he moved towards logic as a field?
Yeah, kind of. So apparently he was very attached to his older brother, who went to study at the University of Vienna, which at the time and still today is a really good university. Um, but I mean, other than being a very good student, during his high school years, he went to university at 18, and he he joined or was a participant in what came to be known as the Vienna Circle, which at the time was this big, central, think tank of very influential philosophers. The most famous of which is Rudolf Carnap, I guess. But it had other famous, members. The founder, I think, was Moritz Schlick, and it also contained Hans Hahn, who's a famous mathematician, and ended up supervising his dissertation. But at the time, the Vienna Circle was really trying to solve kind of all problems of philosophy using logic and science with a capital S, and they ended up founding the philosophical movement of logical positivism. So he came into the influence of this circle, and they had a huge influence on imparting the importance of formal logic, and Gödel really took that to heart.
So you said that he came to Vienna because of his brother, and how attached he was to his brother. Was his brother also part of that circle?
No,
What
no.
did he study?
I can't remember actually. I think it was biology or chemistry.
Mm-hmm.
I don't actually know what happened to his brother. I think they remain close, but I'm not actually. Yeah, I'm missing a detail there, which is what happened with his brother, right? there's something I need to dig into after that.
All right, so he met these people that were part of the Vienna Circle,
Mm-hmm.
and he was studying at that time. Did he meet with these people immediately when he got to Vienna? Did he got to them via a professor or?
I don't actually know. I suspect that, I'm just speculating here. But the way these things happen is you have a bright young student that comes to a university and they're excited about knowledge and they're excited about learning. They end up forming these connections and they end up becoming parts of these like groups of friends that want to you know, talk about science and talk about math and talk about philosophy. I think Gödel was always, extremely religious, but I think he was religious in this very, you know, uh, uh, this very philosophical way. He wanted to think about theology. He wanted to think about, the nature of thought and of the nature of knowledge and the nature of like reality. And so, yeah, I think you have a young, very philosophically minded, very bright mathematician. He's going to gravitate towards groups of people that talk about these
Right.
things.
And it went to the university at, they say, at age 18, which brings us to 1924. And that was the time where it was the golden years, right? Golden age. Very,
Yeah, it was certainly
there was these meetings with artists or philosophers, kind of in big cities, particularly in Europe, and so he
yeah.
was probably, as you said, brought to these meetings by professors or people of influence that acknowledged and realized how successful this young person was. I mean, he was very successful in his studies, I imagine.
Yeah, I mean, I can only imagine that that's what happened. But again, just speculation. Like I said, Hans Hahn, famous mathematician, um, took him as a student. He did his dissertation on the completeness theorem, which is basically, this extremely foundational result in logic, where, I'll talk about it in detail later. But yeah, essentially you're kind of showing that the rules, the syntactic rules of logic, are complete. They actually capture everything you could possibly say in terms of truth. And this is, he's 23, so he proves this super foundational result in a super like exciting field at the time at age 23. And
So he defended his PhD at age 23 with extremely powerful results. That's very impressive.
it is, and it sounds like he then went on to try and solve the completeness result for mathematics, right? So this is kind of the completeness result for logic was a stepping stone for what was hoped to be a completeness result in mathematics, but it turns out that it doesn't hold for all of mathematics. The opposite holds. There's this incompleteness result, and he managed to prove this in 1930. So by by age 24, he had basically solved one of the huge open problems in this new field of mathematics, right? Mathematical
Wow.
logic.
That is incredible.
Yeah, it is. And yeah, this was a huge deal. I mean, Hilbert had posed this or a similar problem as I think his first or second, big open problems of mathematics in 1895 or something. And yeah, I mean, Gödel's now this young mathematician who just basically overturned. I mean, it was very much expected that the completeness theorem for mathematics would hold, and so out of the blue, he comes with this crazy solution in the opposite direction of everybody, that everybody expected. And yeah, he's 23. He
Wow. So when you come with a result that powerful, and as you said, that it was the opposite of what people wanted to prove or wanted to end at, I cannot imagine how it was received and how it impacted his life from now on. I don't want to get into specifics of how it was received and responses of certain logicians, but was his results ever disputed? Like, were people trying to prove that what he did was somehow erroneous or anything like that?
Yeah, this is a complex matter that I'm not sure we'll have time to get into now, but the proof itself was accepted pretty quickly. It's very clean proof, and Gödel is extremely punctilious. So he ended up very, very carefully writing up the result and publishing it. And I think, mathematicians at the time knew how to recognize a correct proof. And so, if you carefully read the proof, you would understand that what he stated and proved was correct. Now the question is, are the philosophical and mathematical implications of that theorem, how far do they reach? Is it completely hopeless to try and circumvent these results or find a setting where they don't apply? And I think at the beginning, people really did believe you could circumvent these results, right? This is an impossibility result. So it's very common to sort of look at the hypotheses and try to weaken them or try to find a slightly different way of stating the result so that you don't get the impossibility. But it turns out that this result is very robust and it's very hard to avoid. And it's part of this very deep phenomenon that people eventually came to understand and internalize. But even Gödel himself didn't really understand just how far-reaching and how impactful the result was at first. But as a theorem, people accepted it almost immediately.
I imagine that it opened doors,
Yes.
huge doors for him, that he was able to then move towards, even better circles than the Vienna Circle, which sound like it was huge at the time. So what did he do after his huge results?
This is definitely the stepping stone for international fame for Gödel. And I think I'll stop it now because we're already running long. And we'll talk about the post-incompleteness result life in the next episode.
It seems like it's a good place to stop, as it being a very defining moment in his life,
exactly.
in his professional life. Well, thank you so much for having me today.
Yeah,
it was
no problem.
very fun to talk about Gödel.
Yes, I agree.